So it looked like WNBA players has agreed to Kathy Engelbert 30-day extension.
The WNBA just dodged a lockout with a 30-day extension, and honestly, fans are absolutely losing their minds right now. Players, including Caitlin Clark and everyone else who's been stuck in this league's chaotic mess all year, agreed to give Commissioner Kathy Engelbert more time to figure things out. But here's the kicker. This extension might actually make everything worse, not better, and nobody seems ready to admit it. So, what do you think? Is this 30-day extension actually going to fix anything, or are they just delaying the inevitable disaster?
Now, man, news is coming out of the WNBA pipeline that the players has agreed to basically not have a lockout.
Alright, here we are again with even more WNBA drama, because apparently this league just can't go more than 5 minutes without some kind of controversy or organizational nightmare. The news just broke that the WNBA and the Players Association reached an agreement on a 30-day extension, meaning instead of a lockout kicking off on November 1st, they're pushing everything back to November 30th. Both the players and the league agreed to it, and Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner who's been smack in the middle of basically every single problem the WNBA has faced over the past few years, gets another whole month to try and figure things out. So let me break this down for you. Why are fans so absolutely furious about this? First off, a lot of people were really hoping the players would stand their ground and actually force a real confrontation with the league, especially since they have more leverage right now than they've ever had in the entire history of the WNBA. The league just wrapped up its most watched season ever, primarily because Caitlin Clark brought in millions of brand new fans. Attendance was through the roof, TV ratings skyrocketed, and social media engagement was insane. This was by all accounts the perfect time for the players to demand real meaningful change, better salaries, better travel conditions, better everything. But instead, they chose to extend negotiations and give Engelbert even more time.
I think it's pretty clear that the players do not trust Kathy Engelbert. And it's actually been clear for a while. And I can tell you that I have had private conversations with players, and both former and present, and many of them have expressed the exact same thing that Nafisha Collier said. And if you notice across social media, from Angel Reese to all different players, they were all doing this. The players and the owners and league leadership are at odds because they feel like so far these CBA negotiations have very much reflected that mentality. I'm pretty sure a deal is not going to get done. Not if Kathy Engelbert is the one leading these negotiations. A deal is absolutely not going to get done because the players have no respect for her. He is probably thinking the same thing that I'm thinking, in that this leadership can't continue if it's like this. And so this is her and the players' way of getting Kathy Engelbert about the paint.
But here's the problem with that logic, and it's a simple one. Kathy Engelbert has had years to fix these issues, and well, she just hasn't. She's been commissioner since 2019, and the league still doesn't pay players enough to live comfortably without having to play overseas during the offseason. What's even more insane is the travel situation, which is still an absolute joke, with elite athletes flying commercial, dealing with endless layovers, and sometimes not even getting to their destination until the middle of the night before a game the very next day. The schedule is still packed way too tight with back-to-back games that just skyrocket injury risk. The officiating is still maddeningly inconsistent and controversial, and the marketing, it's still terrible outside of whatever Caitlin Clark manages to do herself. So why on earth would anyone believe that giving Engelbert another 30 days is suddenly going to magically result in meaningful change? Fans on social media are calling this a massive mistake by the players, saying they had all the power in the world and simply chose not to use it. Some people are even specifically calling out Caitlin Clark for agreeing to this extension, which is really interesting because she's in a unique position, right? She's the biggest star in the league by a mile, bringing in more viewers, more sponsors, and more money than anyone else. If she had decided to publicly oppose this extension and push for a harder stance against the league, that would have carried serious weight, but she didn't. She went along with everyone else.
Hey, Nafisha Collier continues to use Caitlin Clark when it comes to these CBA negotiations, and it's quite obvious why. She is the only leverage, the only type of leverage that the Players Association has. She is the only bargaining chip the players have that the owners look at and say, I'm not sure if we really want to lose that.
Now this is where it gets genuinely complicated. Caitlin Clark probably has the absolute least to lose from a lockout compared to literally any other player. She's raking in millions from endorsements with Nike, Gatorade, State Farm, and a whole bunch of other massive brands. Her off-court income is already way higher than anything she makes from the WNBA, so honestly a lockout wouldn't even hurt her financially at all. But get this, a lot of other players don't have that kind of luxury. Most WNBA players rely heavily on their league salary and those overseas contracts, and a lockout could genuinely mess up their finances, especially if it drags on for months and months. So you can definitely understand why they'd be super hesitant to let things escalate to that point.
We saw the WNBA come out and say that the WNBA players were lying about the negotiation and that the players were not responding to their offers. The WNBA sent out an offer on October 1st to the WNBPA. They did not respond to them nearly for the entire month. They responded October 27th with the counter. Over 3.5 weeks later. So the WNBA wasn't lying about that. That's why I thought there would be no extension when it came to this. But the news is here. The WNBA, they have agreed to a 30-day extension with the WNBPA, and this will run through November 30th.
And that, my friends, is exactly why this whole situation is so incredibly frustrating for fans. The players who actually have the most leverage are also the ones who need the WNBA the least, while the players who need the WNBA the most are the ones with barely any leverage at all. It's a completely broken system, and this 30-day extension does absolutely nothing to fix it. It just delays the conversation. Let's talk about Cathy Engelbert specifically, because she's really the person fans are most angry with. While the WNBA has indeed grown in popularity during her leadership, let's be real, that growth has almost nothing to do with anything she's done. It's because of the players. It's because Caitlin Clark exploded into a superstar, bringing mainstream attention, because Angel Reese ignited drama and rivalries that get everyone talking, and because players like Asia Wilson and Breanna Stewart continue to be unbelievably excellent at basketball. The league grew despite Engelbert's leadership, not because of it. So what has Engelbert actually accomplished as commissioner? Sure, she secured some new sponsorship deals, which is good, and she landed the league a better TV contract, also good. But those things happened because the product on the court improved and the players became incredibly marketable. Engelbert didn't create that, she just happened to be commissioner when it happened. And in the meantime, she's utterly failed to address the fundamental core issues that have plagued the league for years. The salary situation is frankly embarrassing. The max contract in the WNBA is around $200,000, while minimum salary NBA players make almost $1 million. Yes, the NBA makes way more money than the WNBA, everyone understands that, but the revenue split is what truly matters, and WNBA players get a significantly smaller percentage of league revenue than NBA players do. That's simply not fair, and it's something Engelbert could have pushed much harder to change, but she didn't. The travel situation is even more embarrassing. WNBA players are elite professional athletes, yet they're flying commercial, dealing with layovers, sometimes not even getting to their destination until the middle of the night before a game the next day. That's not just uncomfortable, it's a competitive disadvantage and a huge injury risk. Teams that can afford to charter flights have a real unfair advantage over teams that can't, creating an uneven playing field, which is terrible for the integrity of the sport. Engelbert talks about fixing this every single year, but it still hasn't been fixed. The officiating is another disaster that Engelbert just refuses to address properly. Fans, players, and coaches constantly complain about inconsistent calls, terrible replay decisions, and referees who seem to have personal grudges against certain players. Caitlin Clark, for example, got absolutely beat up all season with moving screens, hip checks, and hard fouls that mysteriously didn't get called, and other players faced similar treatment. The league issued some technical fouls and fines, sure, but there was zero real systemic change to make officiating genuinely better, and that responsibility falls directly on the commissioner. Engelbert hasn't done anything meaningful about it. And let's not forget the Caitlin Clark snub from the Olympic team. That was a complete PR disaster that made the WNBA and USA basketball look incredibly petty and stupid. Caitlin was by far the most popular player in women's basketball, and they left her off the Olympic Olympic roster, with the reasoning being she was too inexperienced or that veteran players deserved the spots more. But let's be honest, everyone knew the real reason was politics and jealousy from older players who resented her popularity. Engelbert could have stepped in and made it clear that the best players should make the team regardless of feelings, but she didn't. She stayed silent and let the controversy play out, which significantly hurt the league's image. So when fans hear that players agreed to give Engelbert another 30 days to negotiate, they're rightfully skeptical. Why would this time be different? What's going to change in 30 days that couldn't have changed in the past 5 years? The answer is probably nothing. This extension just kicks the can down the road and lets everyone avoid making hard decisions right now. Some people are defending this move by saying negotiations take time and that avoiding a lockout is always better than having one. And sure, lockouts are bad, they hurt everyone involved, but sometimes you have to be willing to endure short-term pain for long-term gain. The players had a golden opportunity to force real structural changes to the league. They had leverage, they had public support, and they chose not to use it. It's incredibly disappointing to fans who genuinely wanted to see the league actually evolve. There's also the question of what happens on November 30th if they still don't have a deal. Do they extend again? Do they finally have a lockout? Do the players just cave and accept whatever the league offers? Nobody knows, and that uncertainty is a huge part of what's making fans so frustrated. This whole situation feels like it's been mishandled from the start, and this 30-day extension is just more evidence of that. Another issue is how this directly affects the upcoming season. The draft lottery is supposed to happen soon, training camps are supposed to start in a few months, and free agency is supposed to happen. If there's still no collective bargaining agreement by the end of November, all of that gets thrown into absolute chaos. Teams won't know what their salary cap is, players won't know what they can earn, and rookies coming into the league won't know what to expect. It's a total mess, and it could have been avoided if the league and the players had handled this better from the very beginning. Caitlin Clark's involvement in all this is particularly interesting to fans. She's the face of the league, whether she wants to be or not, and everything she does gets analyzed and debated. When she agreed to this extension along with the other players, some people saw that as her being a team player and supporting her fellow athletes, but others saw it as her missing a massive opportunity to use her platform to demand better for everyone. Both perspectives definitely have some merit. On one hand, Caitlin probably doesn't want to be seen as someone who's only looking out for herself. She makes plenty of money from endorsements, but most of her teammates don't. If she had pushed for a hard stance that led to a lockout, she'd be fine financially. But other players would genuinely suffer, which would make her look selfish, and she's been incredibly careful about her public image. She wants to be seen as someone who cares about the league and her teammates, not just someone chasing her own interest. On the other hand, Caitlin has more power than anyone else to actually force change. If she had come out publicly and said the players deserve better and that she supports taking a harder line against the league, that would have shifted the entire conversation. Sponsors would have paid attention, the media would have paid attention, and the league would have been under massive pressure to give the players what they want. By staying quiet and going along with the extension, she arguably wasted that opportunity. It's also worth noting that this whole situation just highlights how dysfunctional the WNBA is as an organization. The NBA has its problems too, but they generally handle labor negotiations much more smooth. The WNBA, on the other hand, seems to stumble from one crisis to another without ever truly learning from past mistakes, and a lot of that comes down to leadership. Cathy Engelbert is the common thread through all of these problems. She's the one who's supposed to be steering the ship, and she just keeps running it into icebergs. Fans wanted this to be the moment where the WNBA finally got serious about fixing its core problems. The league just had its best year ever. There's momentum, there's attention, there's money coming in. This was the perfect opportunity to negotiate a new deal that actually reflects the true value the players bring to the league. Instead, they got a 30-day extension that solves absolutely nothing and just delays the inevitable conflict. Some people are also pointing out that the players' union might not be as strong or as organized as it needs to be. The NBA Players Union is powerful and has a history of getting good deals for its members, but the WNBA Players Union is still figuring things out and might not have the same level of internal coordination. That could explain why they agreed to this extension instead of taking a harder stance, because if the players aren't unified in what they want, it's much harder to negotiate effectively. The timing of this extension is also suspicious to some fans. It pushes the deadline to November 30th, which is right before the holiday season. If negotiations are still ongoing at that point, there's going to be immense pressure to just get a deal done so everyone can move on with their lives. The league might be banking on that pressure to get the players to accept less than they truly deserve. It's a strategic move that benefits the league more than the players, which is why fans are so skeptical. So bottom line is this: the WNBA had a chance to make real progress on issues that have been holding the league back for years, but instead they chose to delay, extend, and just hope everything works out. Kathy Engelbert gets to keep her job for now without facing any real consequences for her failures. The players get to avoid a lockout but don't get any of the major improvements they've been asking for, and fans are left wondering why everyone involved seems so afraid to actually fix the problems that everyone knows exist. This 30-day extension might very well end up being remembered as a massive missed opportunity, or maybe negotiations will go great and everyone will get what they want by November 30th. But based on the WNBA's track record, fans aren't exactly optimistic. They've seen this movie before, and it usually doesn't have a happy ending. So what do you think? Did the players make the right call agreeing to this extension, or should they have pushed harder for real change? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because trust me, this situation is far from over, and if you want to stay updated on all the WNBA drama, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss anything.